So, hello everyone. We're just here with Tucker, and we're just starting our force fetch training. So, just to start out with, I'll explain a couple of things. I know that there's a PowerPoint, and I'll be doing the practical portion of this with you in a few minutes. But this will give you an idea what force fetch is all about. So, some of the tools that you need for this, in particular. Fetch. So some of the tools that you hold now, okay? So there you got kind of an idea what the force fetch is all about right there. So he dropped it, so the correction is obviously the fetch. So some of the tools you're gonna need is probably a shoelace, okay? Well, we've got the shoelace around his knuckle, and then, or his knee, and then down through, passing through his feet. And it's just a pinch to get him to comply with the force fetch. The other thing is you want the dog up on some kind of a table. This takes him out of his element. He's more apt to learn quicker. It creates less confident environment for him, so he's more apt to pay attention to what you're doing. It also allows you to see him eye to eye, and to, instead of you bending over working on this, you're eye to eye and you're working with him. So right now he's feeling the pressure, you can see that. So just keep your dog, one of the most important things to do is just keep your dog what I call high, keep him happy. Now you can see that he's feeling the pressure, but he's holding on, he's doing what we're asking. So one of the things that I kind of skipped over is before you start the session, now we've already done this 2 or 3 times, so he's starting to feel the pressure. But get your dog happy on that counter. So what you want to do is you just want to get him excited. Get him to be on that counter. He needs to associate that positive experience with this counter. So you're just going to you're going to take that from him, and you're just going to get him happy. And I don't want to do that again because he's already at a point where we're already teaching this. But you just want to, if you have a longer table, use that and just get him happy. Encourage them, and then get them to chase the wooden dowel or the bumper or whatever it is that you're going to use. You can use that as a happy bumper. And I'll talk about the happy bumper later. So at this point, he's already had a couple of force fetches done. I'm going to do another one here, but the important thing is just keep him high. Good boy. Encourage him at all times. The most important thing. A lot of people have or struggle with this technique because they think it's, I guess, too hard on the dog. Well, the reason we do the force fetch is it actually brings your obedience along. It actually reinforces your obedience, which you've already started with. So this just brings everything together and completes your dog. Very important process. I'm not saying that all dogs should be force fetched, but I think most dogs, if you have a field dog and you want them to pick up that soiled bird, for example, that poison bird they call it, in other words, a bloody duck or a real wet duck or a wet pheasant. You want that dog to pick that up on command. So the difference between force fetching a dog and just telling him to fetch is your will, I guess, or his will. His will, he picks it up as he pleases. If he doesn't want to pick it up, he doesn't have to pick it up. Through the force fetch, you're commanding him, telling him to pick it up. You're demanding that he picks it up. And that's what the important element of force fetch is if you tell him to pick up a pencil, he'll pick that pencil up, a beer, whatever. And that's the whole idea behind this. So like I said, you start out, keep it positive as positive as you can. So we're just going to go into how it's done now. So I've got the string in my hand. All I'm going to do is put as much pressure as I need to put to get him to open up his mouth. He'll open up his mouth because eventually he's going to understand that this needs to get into his mouth in order for that pressure to come off. No different than an e-collar. This is just transitioning towards the e-collar. Eventually we'll be there. So he's getting better at it. This is only his second day, so he understands that if he wants this pressure off of this foot, he needs to get this in his mouth. I'm going to give him, at some point, we're going to be putting it way over here, and he's going to have to move to get it. That's eventually down the road. That's maybe a week or 2 down the road where he understands that he needs to get this in his mouth and he needs to hold it in order for that pressure to come off of his foot. So here's an example of it right here. So The command's going to be fetch. Put it in front of his mouth. He'll open up his mouth, jam it in there, and release that pressure. Okay? So here we go. He knows it's coming, so just keep him high. Okay. Tucker, fetch, fetch. So he opened his mouth. Bring him up. Good boy. Just encourage your dog all the time. Trust me, this is not going to have any negative ramifications on your dog. You are going to have one of the best dogs in the field because he understands that he needs to fetch and hold that bird on command, which is really why this is such an important phase of training. Again, some people don't like it. I would like to stress that once he has that bird in his mouth, hold, you shouldn't be able to knock it out. That's the idea of the force fetch. Until you tell him to release, he shouldn't be releasing that bird. And later on, we're going to test him. We're going to try and knock that right out of his mouth. So he's holding it pretty good now. Hold. I'm telling him to hold. Give him a little tap. Again, you wouldn't start the force fetch this way. We'll talk about that. He needs to understand what fetch means. So, I guess going back a little bit, the first thing that you're going to teach him is you're just going to teach him the force fetch without using this string. You're just going to say fetch, and then you're going to put it in his mouth. You're going to use his gums to open his mouth up. Let's just back up a step and do that. Out. So when you start this, you're going to start maybe a week before the actual force training, and you're going to say, he doesn't, he understands the pain compliance part of this. He knows what fetch means, but this is how you start teaching fetch, and I should have started with this. So I place the dowel in front of his mouth. I tell him to fetch, open up his mouth, use his gums. Once it's in there, tell him to hold. Good boy. Now he understands that. One of the important things that you need to do so that he's not experiencing the pain is just make sure that his lips aren't between his teeth. So just lift his lips up and make it comfortable for him to hold that bird, or that, in this case, that dowel, and just say hold. If he drops that, you pick it up and you jam it back in his mouth. I don't want to say jam, but get it back in there quick so that he understands that he needs to fetch that, okay? And he needs to hold it. Eventually, when we transition to the ground and we tell him to fetch, if something happens that, I'm sure he will, but if something happens that he doesn't fetch, then we'll be transitioning to a different pressure point, which will be the ear to the collar. A lot of people go to that right away. I find that the string is the most effective, and then transitioning to the collar or to the ear, and then eventually to the e-collar itself. So I'll just do one more example of, you want to do this starting out 2 or 3 times, not too much. And like I said, keep your dog high, keep him happy, good boy. Encourage him, okay? So he knows that it's coming because I'm picking up the string. Try and keep that in your hand all the time. Out. So when dogs feel pressure like this, they have a tendency not to want to let go. So you might have to just twist it a bit, open his mouth. Good boy. Just encourage him so that he understands that you want him to release. Again, we're going to do it again. So now he's got to fetch. So here we go. Fetch, fetch. Very little pressure that time. Good boy. It's okay. Now he's feeling the pressure, so just get him up. He's good. Check and make sure this isn't too tight. He's good. He's doing well. Good boy. Again, encourage your dog. Make sure that he's happy. We're at the end of our session for this particular lesson. So I'm gonna release him, and how I'm going to do that is I'm just gonna ask him to release that dowel. I'm gonna take this off so he knows that it's over. Again, you can get him to release the dowel first, but in this case, I'm confident that he's gonna hold that dowel. I've taken that off. He understands that the lesson's over. Now I want to get him happy. So at the beginning of the lesson plan, I mentioned happy bumpers. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. We're in a garage here, and my wife is videoing us, and so we're in some confined spaces here. But I just wanted to do this and have you guys have the opportunity to show you guys really on video what this is about. So now I'm just going to ask him for that dowel out. Out. He's still holding it pretty tight because of the pressure. And just feel free to just, pinch his gums a bit. There you go. Good boy. Now encourage him. Now the important thing is he has to have that positive experience before he leaves this table, or you're gonna have a hell of a time getting him back up here next day. So, we're all done, Tucker. Let's go. Come on, get it. Come on, buddy. See his tail? He's moving his tail. Come on, get it, Tucker. Come on, come on. This way. Okay, so stay there. So now I can use the bumper because it's happy time. Come on, Tucker. Come on, get it. Good boy. Get up there. Get up there. Good boy. Fetch it up. Fetch. Come on. Get it. Get it. Catch. Good. Sit down. Oh, get it. Come on, Tucker. Get it. Good boy. Okay. Okay, do you want to come down? Okay, let's play. So he's pretty happy from the table, so I'm going to bring him down now. Don't use this as a training opportunity for him. He's free. My command for him is, okay, high on. You can use any command you want. I use high on, and now I'm going to throw him a couple happy bumpers. So if you just, okay, Tucker, come here. Go get it. So the dog's happy again. You're bringing him up. Look at his tail. Understand the attitude of your dog. Come here. Good boy. Again, just keep throwing that bumper. Get him happy. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Nice work. Okay, get up there, buddy. Whoops. Okay, good boy. Attaboy. Encourage your dog. Get him up. He's high. Look at his tail. He's happy. Again, during this phase of training, you don't want to be allowing him, for example, to play with the kids outside before a training session, because that's going to be counteractive to what you're trying to do here. So he's happy now. Everything's good. He's had a few happy bumpers. I'm done with him. One of the important things, if you want to fast track this type of training, is, I didn't mention it before, the difference between it happening quick and happening a little bit slower is put them in the kennel at least an hour to 2 hours before you train. After you're done training, do the same thing. Put them in the kennel for a couple of hours. I know trainers that put them in the kennel all day during the for a month during the obedience and the force fetch training. The reason for that is because they're not comparing anything else to that. They actually come out of the kennel and they're happy to be out of the kennel, so they look forward to that training. So one of the things that's also important is, as part of the obedience, is just make sure that you're commanding your dog. Kennel. Okay? Give him that command. He's happy to go in his kennel. That's his safe place after, especially after the force training. But his attitude's good. I'm happy with that. So I'll leave him there for a couple of hours, and then I'll bring him out. And in his case, he has free reign of the house because he's been such a good dog, and obviously the obedience training has allowed him to have that free reign in the house. So again, that's this segment of training. I hope it helps, and I'm here to do some practical training with you, and you'll have a better idea of what this is all about.